Hello again, everybody. This is the reading mini lesson for week 2. I'm going to do a reading lesson on one video and a writing lesson on another video because there's a lot of new concepts during week 2 that I want to go over with you and give you some pointers and help with. So this video will be focusing on the reading. There will also be one on the writing. Also going to do one on science too, but this is just for the reading. So if we look at our reading lessons that we have here on our lesson plan that I handed out to you that was in your packet, you can see we've completed at this point week 1, and there are videos that go with that. There's one video for the whole thing. It's called week 1 literacy mini lesson. So if you need any help with those things, that was on there. But this video is going to focus on week 2, where we're going to talk about some stories that we pretty much know. Hansel and Gretel, Cinderella, and then these are some we don't know, but these are some nonfiction pieces that I'll talk about too. There's a twist on these two stories today, and I want to show that to you and go over a couple things to make sure you're ready. So this video is going to focus on these 3 dots right here. The materials you'll need for today's lesson is a pencil, and if you have a highlighter, like I said in some other videos, a yellow marker works good, or maybe a crayon or something that you can underline with. Just something to mark with. It doesn't have to be a highlighter, but just something so you can mark it. If you don't have anything like that, you can always just circle with the pencil too, and it would do the same thing. It's just for marking our knowledge to help us answer questions, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The objective of today's lesson is to look at a piece that someone wrote who was writing an opinion about something and being able to understand their point of view while they're writing. Everyone has a point of view and what we call a voice when they write. Some of you, when you write, you're writing, your voice is very strong. I can tell it's you because it sounds like you talking when you write. Some of you, your voice is completely different than how you talk, and that's okay, but everybody's writing voice is a little different. And the reason that we write depends on why we're writing. Well, these pieces we're going to read today, people were writing because they were giving their opinion on something. And so we're going to take a look at that. I'm going to read a little bit to you today, but some of it you're going to read on your own. After all, this is reading, and this can count for your minutes of reading on your schedule where you're getting your minutes of reading every week. So you can use these for that, the time you spend on this. All right, well, let's get started. So let me get this out of the way because now we know what we're doing and why we're doing it. I'm going to start with just a blank piece of paper, and I want to kind of review a couple things with you on this piece of paper that we've talked about. And it's stuff that's not new, but I just want to have it fresh in your brain because we're activating that prior knowledge to make sure that things you already knew, it's fresh in your brain so that you use those skills when you work on the work we're going to do today. So the very first thing that I want to do is draw this. And for some of you, this is going to be really familiar. Okay? So if we are doing Hansel and Gretel, what we did in 2nd grade and 3rd grade, but a lot in the beginning of 4th grade too, was something called a story map, where we would connect on little pieces to a cloud or a shape of whatever, and then we would talk about what that story had for parts. And one of the parts is the title. Okay. Another important part is something we call a setting. Do you remember what the setting is? Setting is where the story takes place, where it happens. Where is this story happening? What's going on with it? Sometimes the story is very easy to give the setting to. Sometimes the setting is something just absolutely fantastic. Sometimes we don't exactly know the setting, but we can kind of describe it. Okay. Another important piece of a story is the characters. And we all pretty much remember that. That's who's in the story. Hansel and Gretel, I'm going to take a wild stab here that probably involves a character named Hansel and Gretel, right? Even if we've never read the story, we could figure that out. All right, so those are 2 of the things. Now, one of the other things that's really important is the events that happen in a story. There's a beginning, a middle, and an ending to every story. And when you put those together, it tells you what happened in the story. That's the part that's usually the longest, and that's the part when you take a reading test with me, you have to kind of explain to me and, tell me what you know about it. And I always ask you beginning, middle, and end because those are the 3 parts you need to know. I'm adding another piece that we don't always have on there today, but sometimes it's good to know this, is who's the author? Who wrote this? Because sometimes you might know another author and be able to use knowledge from something you already read to know who wrote this. And if you know something about that, you might know something about this writing too. And it kind of helps. Well, today we're going to use a story map. We're not going to make one though. You're going to kind of have a mental story map. But we are going to be reading this story, but not in the way we usually read it. We're not actually going to read the story. It'll be in there, but actually it's somebody writing about the story. So they're explaining the story, but they're telling you what they think of it. When someone tells you what they feel about something, we call that, I bet you know what I'm writing, an opinion. That's what we feel about something, how we feel about it. An opinion is not a fact. A fact is something I can back up with data. I could say about Hansel and Gretel, there is a character named Hansel and a character named Gretel in the story. That would be a fact. I could go back into the story, I could find their names, I could show that to you. If I said, Gretel is way cooler than Hansel, that's an opinion, because that's how I feel about it. There's nothing in that story to say that she is cooler than him, but that's just what I think. So that's an opinion. This person's going to read the story. They're actually just going to have one little paragraph giving us a basic run over of the story, and then they're going to tell us what they think about it. So they're going to be giving us their opinion. But having this framework in mind is going to help answer the questions that go with it. So let's read about this and let's see how this works. And this will be your example of what you're going to be working on this week, and there's some other ones for you to try on your own. All right, here is the piece of paper you have, the packet you have. It's the first page. It should be labeled. I labeled them all week 2. So you should be able to find the one that says week 2, but you can also look for the word Hansel and Gretel. Here's some background knowledge. We always take a little picture walk quick. Well, there's Hansel. He's the boy. There's Gretel. That's the girl. And you probably know the story. This is the cottage made out of candy that they find in the woods and all that. Well, we're going to read on here. And again, this story gives us some information. Now, when I go through it, I'm going to highlight some things I think that are important about it. Am I going to use everything I highlight? Probably not, but it's going to highlight the things I think are important. Now, when you're highlighting, like I said in class, it's really important not to just go crazy and highlight everything. If I highlight all of this, I might as well not highlight any of it because you won't be able to find anything. I only highlight things I think that are really important to the story. Okay, so here we go. Hansel and Gretel. The story Hansel and Gretel by the Brothers Grimm is one of the scariest fairy tales that anyone will ever read. Well, the author's name, the Brothers Grimm, I think that might be important. I'm seeing an opinion right here. How about you? The scariest fairy tale that everyone will ever read? Ha! Well, I read some Scottish fairy tales to you that were probably way scarier than Hansel and Gretel. At least they were to me. Maybe not to you. See, it's an opinion. We don't always agree. An innocent brother and sister are lost in the woods. They meet a witch who has evil plans for them. Sorry. The story was written in 1812. It is a story of clever children and wicked adults. It may be too scary for children under age 6. That's definitely an opinion. It was written in 1812. I don't know. That might be important. I think I'm going to highlight that. I'm not sure. At the beginning of the tale, Hansel and Gretel live with their father and mean stepmother. The stepmother hates her stepchildren. In fact, she wants to get rid of them. So she tells her father she wants the children to be taken into the woods and left there. Her excuse? There's not enough food to feed them. Right away, the reader can't help but dislike this cruel woman and feel bad for poor Hansel and Gretel. The reader will wonder why the father seems so powerless to help the children. It's a strong opening, and it makes the reader want to read on. Well, there's some of the story, some of those pieces. Here's our characters, Hansel and Gretel, and the events are here. I'm going to put a little mark here, a little star. That kind of just tells me that's where the events are. And it kind of goes on and tells me a little more. All right. At first, the stepmother's plan doesn't work. The children overhear her plan. So when she takes them into the forest, they outwit her. But their trouble is not over. Next time, the children are taken deeper into the woods. Ooh. You know what? That's a word you don't hear every day. I'm only highlighting it because I'm just wondering if that's a word that you know what that means. Outwit. When we don't know what a word means, what do we do? If there's somebody there at home, you could pause this video and tell them and show them you know this already. But if you don't, listen on, because we're going to review this real quick. When we don't know a word, we have a few choices. One, because we're reading and we want to keep going, we can just put another word in there that we don't really know. We could say outside or whatever and read on, and that won't make a lot of sense. So you might want to go back and look around in the context. She takes them in the forest. They outwit her. And it says here they overhear her plan and it doesn't work. I think outwit might mean something like outsmart, because I know wit means smarts. See, I'm using my background knowledge to figure out what that word means. Now, if I really, really, really didn't know and nobody could help me, I could ask somebody. But if they can't do that, I could always look it up in a dictionary or online, and I could find out what the word outwit means if I needed to. But that makes it hard to read the story when you constantly got to stop and look up words. So if you see a word like that, you might want to highlight it, just so you know. Let's read on. Some stories have a good beginning, but the middle gets boring. Well, that's their opinion, probably. That's a feeling word right there. Hansel and Gretel never gets boring. Okay, maybe. Alone in the woods, the children find a house made of candy and gingerbread, and inside it is an old witch. I didn't like the ending. I wanted more. Who's I? I? What? I? Is that Hansel and Gretel talking? No, that's the author. Remember, they're reading about the story. Hansel and Gretel don't actually talk in here. This is the author talking. I still recommend this story for its evil characters and danger. That's the end of the article. But now, we have some questions we need to answer in the back. And I'm going to kind of go through a couple and show you how to do this so you have a little help. And this will help you on the other article, which is Cinderella too. The questions are very similar, but they're obviously about Cinderella, not about the other things. So, all right, let's take a look. What was the name of the story reviewed? That's easy enough. I don't even need to flip back for that. The name of the story was, so that's called the title. The title was, do you remember what you have to do around a title of a story when you write it? Back at the beginning of the year, we were correcting sentences all the time. This was something they had us do. Yeah, you underline it. You can also put quotes around it because it's a short story, but you can underline it or do quotes. In this case, I'm going to underline it. And I think in the article, the author actually put quotes around it, which is okay too. Who are the characters in the story? Well, we just talked about it in our map, didn't we? Who was in the story? Now, here's the problem. Is the author a character when she says me, I? Or is Hansel and Gretel the characters? Or is Hansel, Gretel, and the author characters? No. The story, the characters are Hansel and Gretel. The author is the person that is writing about it, and that's their opinion, but they're not a character in the story. They didn't jump into the story and help Hansel and Gretel out. They're just talking about it. So the characters, you see how I'm using a complete sentence? That's really important, especially in middle school. So we don't just want to write Hansel and Gretel. The characters are Hansel and Gretel. Now, I am not going to underline it that time. That's not the title. Those are their names. Now, the author of this fairy tale. Ooh, they told us that. I think I might have highlighted that. Ooh, let's go back and look, just to be sure. Besides, even if I knew it, I want to know how to spell it, because there's really no excuse to spell it wrong if it's right in the story. I remember it from the beginning. Oh, yeah. See? My highlighting. It drew my eyes right there, and there it is. The story Hansel and Gretel by the Brothers Grimm. And Grimm has two M's. When I write the word Grimm, it usually has one M, but in their case, it has two because it's their name. So that's our author. All right, so let's go back and let's put that in there. Okay. The authors of this fairy tale are... There's authors because there's two of them, and are because it's a plural. I don't want to say is the Brothers Grimm. You could say that, but if I say Brothers Grimm, then I want to have both because there's two of them or more of one of them. All right. The writer now gives reasons he or she likes the story. We never find out if it's a he or a she. We don't know. That's why they're saying this. So we're supposed to find one reason that she likes this story. Where would I look for that? Well, back in the article, right? So let's head back. All right, here's the article. Now, why did she like this story? Now, I don't need to reread the whole thing. I can just skim through it. Not really. That's about it. It's scary, but it doesn't say why she likes it. Here's the story. This is about what it is. I don't know. Okay, I'm going to keep going down. Yeah, that's what happens. Ooh, here's an opinion. Some stories have a good beginning, but the middle gets boring. Hansel and Gretel never gets boring. Does she like the story? I think so. She also says down here, I still recommend the story for evil characters in danger. I think she's really excited here because I see an exclamation point, that strong emotion. She likes the story, or he doesn't likes the story, because it doesn't get boring. Now we have to write it that way too. So we're going to write the writer. That way we don't have to say he or she, because they are a writer no matter what they are. The writer likes the story because it never gets boring. Cool. All right. Now I'm going to kind of just talk about the last questions and help you through this. I'm not going to do this whole page because you're going to have to go on, and I want to preview the other lessons too. But you get the idea. You look back, you find it, you write it in a complete sentence. Number 5 says, the writer tells something he or she didn't like about the story. What was it, and why didn't she like it? I clearly remember that in there, that she said there was something they didn't like. And I think what I remember was that the story, they wanted more at the end. Who's the audience for this story? Oh, okay. Who's reading this story? Who should be reading this story? And who does the author say should probably not read this story? They gave us a warning in the beginning. They said kids under the age of, I believe, 6 should not be reading this story because it's too scary. Well, there you go. Number 7, the last paragraph mostly is about what? Well, that's pretty easy. You go back, you find the last paragraph, you read it, and you say, what's it mainly about? And then give a summary of what happens in Hansel and Gretel. I'm going to leave a little thing here to help you, though. Remember, when you tell a story and you tell it, you have the beginning, and you have the middle, and you have the end. Those are 3 parts of the story. So I would find something that's important that happened here, something that's important that happened here, and something that's important that happened here in your story. Well, that was a really bad dash. Wow. Okay. Let's fix that. There we go. Okay. So that's what that's the way I would write a sentence of what happened in the beginning, the middle, and the end. That gives us a very good summary, which is a short retell of what happens. All right, let's take a look at our other stories and just be sure we are clear about what happens there. This one is another fairy tale, and this is called Cinderella. Again, this is a person reading the story of Cinderella and saying what they felt about the story. You're going to want to go through it with your highlighter or your color of some sort and find important things. Who wrote it? When was it written? What does the person think? Where's the story? Put a star by the part where they tell the story, just like we did in the other one. Once you do that, you'll be able to go on to the second part of the story, which is questions. They're basically the same questions. Some of them are exactly the same. Look at this. What's the name of the story and who's the author? Well, look at that. Yeah, so we're going to go down and then read the question here. Does the writer like the story? Write a sentence, a phrase that shows why or why not. It says phrase. You can write something shorter there. How did they describe the main character? How are the first paragraph and the last paragraph similar? You're comparing and contrasting them there. On the bottom, it talks about that voice I mentioned. The writer uses his own voice in the story. Give one example of where they used I or me. So find a sentence that contains that and write it down. Who's the audience? Who should read this story? When does Cinderella have to be home? You probably don't even need the story to know that. And summarize what it's about. Again, we'll do beginning, middle, and end. I'm just going to write letters for that. And you can copy those down if you're doing that right now with me. That way you'll remember. You need something from the beginning, the middle, and the end to summarize that story. All right, we're doing great. We're just about done with this mini lesson. And here we have trouble in the Amazon. Why is the rainforest shrinking so quickly? This is not a fairy tale. This is a real piece, nonfiction. So when we read through this, it has headings. And I'd pay attention to these headings because this tells us what that part's about. So if I have to answer a question from something, I don't have to come back and look for where is that again. I can find this heading and know, oh, it's in those sentences right there. So it has, why is the rainforest shrinking so quickly? Causes for concern. And this one goes on to the back page. It has a little part called Fixing the Problem. And did you know? And these are just fun facts. Now, there's no questions here, but there will be, okay, because there's another article. The second article is called The Coral Reef Goes Digital. Can computers save this habitat? And there's sections again. And don't forget, there are photos. And right here, I'm going to highlight this. This is telling us about that picture. What's that thing called when we have a short phrase that tells us about a picture written underneath it? What's that called again? That's a nonfiction feature that we talked about. If you said caption, you're right. That's a caption. And it's there. So here's a section on this. And then this says Reef Rescue. Tells us about that there. And then on the back, there's a map that goes with it. This tells us where it takes place, the continent of Australia. We can see the city of Canberra here. That's the capital. See, my key tells me that. And then the Great Barrier Reef is in color. It's really hard to tell because this is off a photocopier. It's supposed to be showing you that this is a color and then this out here is blue. Okay, so the reef is actually located right inside this little line right here. There's not an actual line drawn on the ground, of course, we know that, but that's where the reef is. The rest of this, even though the color matches, is not all coral reef. This is the ocean, the Coral Sea and the Indian Ocean, which surrounds the continent and country of Australia. All right, and again, there it is, a caption right there, and it kind of tells you where to look, but I wanted to make sure because the color, it doesn't help because it's all black, so it doesn't really help. You're kind of seeing it like Mr. David sees it, so that's how that works. All right, now comes the questions. Now here's what it says. Please watch these directions when you do it. Use the article, Coral Reef Goes Digital, to answer questions 1 to 2. What do people depend on coral reefs for? Go back and find that. What are 2 things that are causing damage or harm to the coral reefs? Go back and find that. Use the article, Trouble in the Amazon, to answer questions 3 to 4. Okay, so now you go there and you use Trouble in the Amazon for this one. What is one important way which Amazon rainforests help people? Who is destroying the Amazon rainforest? I don't think they're looking for names there. I think they're looking for, what is happening. Here you have to use both articles to answer these last 2 questions. Look at this. Based on these 2 questions, what do coral reefs and the Amazon rainforest have in common? Identify 2 or more similarities. Oh, well, I think I know one. I think they're both being threatened by things that are happening to them. I think that's one similarity. You can probably find the other one by reading on. And the final question for this week is, you read the paragraph here. This is a paragraph from the story. You read this. Coral reefs are incredibly threatened, Rick McPherson of California's Coral Reef Alliance told Weekly Reader. They require, now more than ever, that people pay attention and work towards protecting them. And it says, here's the question. Does the Amazon rainforest also require that people work towards protecting it? Why or why not? It may not directly say that, but you'll have to figure it out. And here's what you're going to be doing this week that might be a little different. You have to support that answer. Now, you don't have to write a ton. There's only 3 lines here. You can do it in just a couple sentences, but you do need to support your answer. And you can't just pull the answer out of the blue. Like, they need to protect the rainforest because I love rainforests. Well, that's great, but that's your opinion. So you want to go back into the text and find something that's a fact that actually backs this up and write that down. Okay, so that's your work for the week. Kind of showed you how to do it, showed you how to go through and be a real discerning reader and, find things. And today we were talking about using organization, using a highlighter or something to find things, to find our thoughts. So then it makes it easier to answer these questions critically and think about what we're doing. We also identified a few nonfiction features and other text features in there. And we talked about a story map. Boy, we did a lot. The other thing I wanted to bring up is that when you got your packet, in there are some books. And one of the books you're going to get, you're going to be like, wait a minute, that's not my book. What the heck? I didn't pick that book out. No, I did. I went to the book room at school, and I took your reading level, your current reading level, which I just tested you before you left, and I picked a book at that level that you haven't read before, and I put it in there. So you have something to read to challenge. That's something that should be at your instructional level, that you can read and really have to think through and keep working on your skills, even though we're not meeting face to face. So, this is our lesson for week 3. There'll be another literacy lesson next week for reading. This week, we're going to also have one for writing, so check that out. And I might even have a short one on science, so you'll have to check that one out too. So, hope everything's going well. Again, if you need help with anything, you can message me, you can comment, you can email me with your email account from school, have your parents contact me on Remind, or come to those office hours that have been going from Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 to 11. Hope everybody is well and hope to see you soon. Talk to you later.